Okay, Don, so I have heard.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring out how to work
No,
it. Still figuring out how to work your camera here, buddy.
Hey, Dave,
I see what you mean.
It wasn't just
It wasn't just you. So I have
think
heard.
you're a bit crooked on. No, okay.
Oh God. So I know how to do this. I know you know how to do this. But one of the main questions that I have from friends is, what is the appropriate? There we are. Tension for a chainsaw chain. I've heard a couple things like, I have heard that, this one, see, that seems a little bit tight to me, but somebody told me once, you should just be able to see, the bottom tooth on there. So what do you think is the best way to tighten the chain and for how tight it should be?
Okay, Dave, you're on the right track. You're pretty accurate. This saw here, it might be a little tight. It is a little slightly tighter than it should be, although it is set at a good tension, Dave.
Okay, so you say it's the right tension.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
So what that means, Dave, is I'm pulling the chain half an inch,
Okay.
and it springs back on its own.
Okay, well, does that have anything to do with how old the chain is? Or, is it any less springy depending on the age of the chain or the wear of the chain?
Absolutely, Dave. So if you buy a brand new chainsaw or you buy a new chain for your saw, chain's brand new out of the box, you have to actually put it a little tighter than what this saw is.
Why is that?
Because a brand new chain will stretch within the first 10 to 15 minutes of use.
Okay.
Okay, so if I put a new chain on for a customer, and I know they're going out with it, I put it on a little tighter.
Okay.
Especially if I know the customer doesn't really know how to use chainsaws or doesn't have the same experience as what I would.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I do that is because I know the chain will stay at the proper tension after he's used it for a little while.
Okay, so you're assuming that he isn't going to check the tension after that 10 to 15 minutes, and that it should be right in that kind of sweet spot that we're looking for, after that 10 to 15 minute mark.
Absolutely, Dave. But I always educate my customers. Okay.
Okay.
If I put on a new chain, I educate them. Look, this is the tension you want.
Do that a couple more times there. So you can just barely see.
I go for the 1/2 inch pull down.
Okay, and then with the 1/2 inch pull down, it looks like you can just see almost the top of that.
The drive link.
The drive link. Okay.
So you were accurate in the introduction of the video, Dave.
Okay.
You've learned that over the months you've spent with me.
Yep.
But again, I'll just reiterate what I said. When I send off a chainsaw with a new chain to a customer, I educate them. This is the tension you want.
Right.
Your chain will get loose in the first 10 to 15 minutes. Stop your saw. I tell them, let it cool. Do not adjust your chain when it's hot.
Okay.
Why do you think that, Dave?
So I think when it's hot, it's stretched out.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So why do you think you wouldn't want to adjust it when it's hot, Dave, and stretched?
So
what's that going to do?
So once the chain cools down, you're worried that if you had it, let's say, a little bit on the tight side when the chain was hot and the saw's just been running, and you go and it's a little bit too tight, I feel like there might be some damage caused once that chain contracts from cooling.
Absolutely, Dave. So what's going to happen is if you adjust your chain to this tension when it's super hot, like you said, it will contract when it cools.
Is there an issue with that though?
There is. So if your chain is too tight, what's going to happen is you're going to wear out your bar prematurely and the chain prematurely, even if your saw is oiling the bar and chain properly.
Okay.
Okay, it's going to create more friction because everything's tight. Now, the extreme damage that you will get if you over tighten a chain or you over tighten it when it's hot,
Yep.
especially here in the winter, we get cold winters.
Yep.
That chain could contract so much, and I've seen it.
You've seen this.
I've seen this to where the crankshaft snapped.
Come on.
Remember that 455 I showed you in the shop here with the snapped crankshaft?
Yes.
I don't know if you took that home, if I sold that to you or not, I don't remember, but I have a chainsaw that came in the shop with a snapped crankshaft.
And that's all from having the chain too tight.
It was.
So you're telling me there's enough force on that
Absolutely.
chain when it contracts, when it's hot, that it'll snap the crankshaft.
Yeah, once it contracts, yes.
So it cools down and it snaps the crank.
Absolutely.
That's kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, so if you live in North America where it gets cold here,
Yeah.
it's not that hard to believe. So a lot of the viewers here today live in hotter climates. They don't see minus 30, 40 degrees Celsius.
Right.
Celsius with a C,
Yeah.
not Fahrenheit. So it's extremely cold. It gets super tight. And what happens is people will actually go and use the chainsaw with a super tight chain.
Right. So they're using it, it's heating up.
They're using it, it's extremely tight.
Yep.
And then poof, the crankshaft breaks.
Wow.
And some of the newer saws, the metal
Mm-hmm.
is not as strong as it was in older chainsaws where the manufacturing process was different.
Right. So, okay, I guess my next question is, so let's say it's minus 30 Celsius for
Yes.
those of us up here in Canada.
Yeah.
Should you be setting your chain any looser than if you're in a hotter climate, or if it's in the summer here when it's 30 degrees Celsius?
Not necessarily. So what you would want to do, or what I do, is I'll adjust my chain at the temperature that I'll be using the saw.
Oh.
Okay, so let's say I had this saw stored in my basement to keep it nice and dry and warm in
Right.
winter.
Right.
I would not adjust it in my basement in the heat. What I would do is bring it outside in the shop or in the shed where it's cold,
Right.
so that when I adjust it, I'm adjusting it at the cold temperature. Then when I go to use it,
Right.
it'll stay at that tension.
Right.
However, if the saw warms up and it's extremely loose, like let's say the chain's loose, I'm still cutting wood all day.
Right.
The chain's super loose because it's hot. You can adjust it hot, but if you do it hot, be super careful that you don't go
Too far.
too far.
Right. So there's a bit of an acclimation process that you do, kind of like if you own a
Yes.
fish, you drop it in the tank with to get used to the temperature. It's kind of like the same thing.
Exactly. So
Cool.
kind of like climbing a mountain and getting
Yes, so to get the oxygen going. Okay, cool. So just the half-inch mark.
Let's do another demo here.
Now, are you doing half-inch from the bottom or the top, and does it matter?
You can go from the top here if you want.
Okay. Oh, there it is. So I just saw the tip of
Yeah.
that drive link.
And you know what, guys, is a drive link is approximately 1/2 inch in length.
Okay, so let me see that again, because I didn't know that.
So that drive link under here
Yep.
is approximately 1/2 inch.
So if you're just seeing the tip of it, you should be good to go.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
you told me, and now I know this for the viewers, you told me that there was a special trick that you should be doing when you tighten the bar of a chainsaw, and that's to do
Absolutely.
with the how high you have this or where this sits in order to make sure that you don't wreck anything when you tighten the bar.
Okay. So what I'll do here, Dave, is I'm going to loosen the chain.
Okay.
And
Yeah, see? Right there. That's what
here-
I'm talking about.
And here's the trick, Dave, is anytime you adjust a chainsaw, and by the way, I have made a video in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and the link is in the top right-hand corner of the screen here in
Yep.
the info button.
Yep.
And I've also put the link in the video description. Always hold your bar up.
Why?
Because what can happen is if you don't hold the bar up and you tighten up the nuts, is the chain might be looser than it should be. See how looser that chain is? Than previously?
Yeah.
And I have not played with the adjustment screw here.
Okay. So you haven't touched the adjuster there?
No,
on
I
this end?
haven't. And you can see it goes down further than
Yeah,
if,
way more.
than if the bar is up.
Okay, so why don't you just tighten it with why don't you just adjust it with the bar all the way down? What's the difference?
If you adjust it with the bar down
Yep.
and you tighten up the nuts,
Yep.
you might find that after a very small amount of use, it's loose again. And another tip, guys, after you hold the bar up and you tighten up the nuts, just the motion of tightening up the nuts
Yep.
will tighten up the chain a bit as well.
Oh.
Okay, so if you adjust your chain but you haven't tightened up the nuts and you're wondering, why is the chain tighter after I tighten up the nuts? Well, that's normal.
Okay.
So you want to take that in consideration, that when you check your tension here holding the bar up, that when you tighten up the nuts, that chain will get tighter just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Okay, so it may be just a little bit looser
Exactly.
than what you think it was, and or where it should be, and then you tighten the bar nuts, and it should bring it in. So now the theory behind tightening, that looks good there. The theory behind having the bar at the top or as high as it goes, is that because when you're using the chainsaw, you're pressing down?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So even though you've tightened up the nuts, the bar will want to work its way up.
Got it.
Right to the top.
Right.
And when the bar is up, the chain is slightly tighter, and then you're keeping the same tension from when you adjusted the chain to when you're using the chainsaw.
Okay, so you want to adjust the bar for the optimum tension because that's what it's going to see when you're pressing it into the wood.
Absolutely.
Makes sense to me.
And another tip is regularly check your chain tension. A good time to check that is when you stop to refuel and re-oil your saw.
Right, same. So when you have it on its side, and you're done putting the oil and the gas in it, and the bar oil, I should say, that's when you check your tension.
Exactly. And
probably a good way to know, actually, too. Sorry to interrupt you there, Don. Probably a good way to know if if the oiling system is working on your chain as well.
Absolutely, because you will see traces of oil on the chain drive links.
Right.
What I'm going to say now might sound contradictory, but when you refuel and re-oil, your bar and chain are warm, and if your chain's excessively loose, you want to readjust it, even though I said you shouldn't readjust it when it's warm.
Right.
If you do readjust it in between the oiling and gassing and you cannot wait half an hour for it to cool down.
Because you're cutting wood.
Exactly. If that's the case, adjust it in small increments, keeping in mind that you're keeping a good tension even after it's cooled down.
Right.
Okay, so you don't want to adjust it when it's hot and just bring it right tight to where it's just half an inch, because if you're done cutting that day and that tension's still there and you're in the cold weather months, the chain may contract way too much.
So you just need to keep in consideration if you're making adjustments in between fuelings and you're cutting still, and you're going to be cutting all day, make sure that it's a little bit looser than what it should be in terms of storage.
Exactly, depending on how hot your bar and chain are.
Got it.
Now this all comes with years of experience.
Right.
So the more you use a chainsaw, the more you will learn about that. I highly recommend people watching today, you can take a basic chainsaw course. They'll teach you all these things. They'll even give you a certificate. I highly, highly recommend that. It's usually about $100.
Okay. And some good information, especially if you're going to be operating one of these frequently.
Absolutely good. That's why I recommended that it would even be good for you to get that.
I'm looking into that. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there any other tips that, I mean, we kind of went on a bit of a, down the path there when we were talking about chain tension. Is there anything else that you can talk about now, or do you think we covered it for now?
I think we covered it pretty good.
Cool.
If anybody watching has any other questions, by all means comment, guys. We try to read every single comment.
For sure.
And we might even use your comment in our next video to personally answer your question.
Right, because if they're thinking it, they're not going to be the only one, right?
Absolutely. And again, this is the whole point of my Apprentice videos, is to answer questions that a lot of people are wondering, and maybe they're just timid to ask the question because they feel it's a dumb question. So no question's a dumb question here.
Right, and a lot of your viewers have a ton of experience, and that some of these might not be geared towards them because they may know a lot more than I do, for example.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of good chainsaw guys on YouTube for sure, with a lot of experience.
Right.
But our videos here is to cover the basics.
Yep.
Cover the basics because not everybody knows everything.
Exactly. And there's a lot of new people that are picking up chainsaws. There's a new generation out there that are bringing out chainsaws to maintain the property.
Absolutely.
So awesome.
Okay, thanks guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks guys, take care.